All right, hello and welcome to IAedChat Live. We are bringing you the latest educational news each month and are very pleased to be able to connect with you this evening. We have a very special guest tonight, Jon Harper, that we will introduce in just a few minutes. And you can find him in the meantime at Jon Harper 70BD. As you can see, tonight's chat will have a live video stream and we'll be taking questions from the audience. So please do not hesitate to give us your questions or thoughts on the live video chat. If you want to put those onto our IAedChat hashtag on Twitter, that would be great. We'll be monitoring that feed, so please don't hesitate to share your thoughts and use your voice. We're going to get this live show on our podcast probably tomorrow. If you've not checked us out on iTunes or Podomatic, please subscribe today. I'll go ahead and get us started with our introductions. You'll notice that we're missing our buddy Dan Butler tonight. He has some family that he hasn't seen for a while that are in town, so we'll be missing him tonight, but I'm sure he will be able to catch up on the hashtag later this week. So I will start off. My name is Andrea Townsley, and I am actually in the middle of transitioning to a new position. I served as a teacher and then a teacher leader at Benton Community for 11 years, and I will be going to Grantwood AEA this summer and into next year as a school improvement consultant. So I'm excited about that change, and I will head on over to Colin for his introduction.
Thanks, Andrea, and you will do wonderful in that job. So I'm happy for you and for you. I also have change. We were just talking about this prior to the broadcast. I have served the last 4 years as the Dean of Students, and this year some change happened in our building, and I was able to have 2 titles, Dean of Students and Associate Principal, and who doesn't want that? You know, more titles is more work. But it was a great year of sacrifice and a great year of doing great things with my team. And then actually even more change on board for me is I will now move into next Saturday, July 1, I will start as the new activities director at Bettendorf High School in Bettendorf, Iowa. So a lot of change and a lot of good things hopefully in the front for me. So pretty excited for tonight. So I will introduce our guest tonight, Mr. Jon Harper, who is currently an assistant principal at Sandy Hill Elementary School in Cambridge, Maryland. This is his 6th year serving as an assistant principal at the elementary level. Prior to this, he served as a math coach and an elementary school teacher. During his 10 years as a classroom teacher, he taught 1st and 2nd, 4th, and 5th grade during his national board certification, which he held for 10 years. For 7 years, he ran a young gentlemen's club that was aimed at helping men reach their full potential. Jon is the host of My Bad on BAM Radio Network podcast about embracing mistakes and how to move forward in a productive manner. Jon is also a frequent blogger, which can be found at jonharper70.com. So, Jon, do you have anything to add to that, my friend?
I think you pretty much said it. Actually, when I wrote this, I was at Sandy Hill, but since I've been transferred, I'm going to be a vice principal at 2 different schools, at Vienna Elementary School and Warwick Elementary School. But everything else is right on.
So are you still in Cambridge?
I still live in Cambridge, but they're going to be in neighboring towns in Vienna and Secretary, Maryland, about 20 minutes away, not very far.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you for joining us tonight. I truly appreciate you taking the time, and I'm sure our listeners and followers feel the same way. So tell me a little bit, Jon, about your background in education and what has brought you where you are today.
Sure, Colin. I actually got into education by accident. I majored in philosophy the first time I went to school. And as you can imagine, you can't do a whole lot with a philosophy degree. And so I came out and thought I would be a doctor. Not really sure why. And so I took a lot of med courses and applied to medical school. While I was waiting to hear from med school, my mom suggested, why don't you try, you got to get a job. So why don't you substitute down the street, like literally where I was just working. And I thought it was a crazy idea. I thought I'm not going to enjoy that, but I tried it, and I'll be honest, I didn't get into med school. but I was happy because I fell in love with teaching. And so I went back and got a degree in elementary education. And like you said in the introduction, taught, first grade all the way to fifth. I was a math coach for about 3 years, and then I've been a VP for the last 7 at the elementary level.
All right, thanks for sharing that background with us. We saw in your bio that you are a nationally board certified teacher. So tell us about that amazing accomplishment and the in-depth process it takes to make this happen.
Well, actually, I was a nationally board certified teacher. It's expired, and it's an amazing process. I'll be honest. I was able to do it when I was single and didn't have kids. I can't even fathom the folks that are able to do that. Kids, but basically you have 4 portfolios that you put together in different areas, and it requires a lot of outside work, a lot of outside activities that, I'll be honest, a lot of teachers do anyway. You put together this portfolio that ends up being probably 60 to 80 pages in length. It's a lot of work, a lot of documentation. It gets you to reflect a lot on what you do and why you do it. And I was very lucky early on when I started teaching to be connected in different areas. I wasn't connected yet on Twitter, or I wasn't blogging yet, but I was connected with different folks in social studies and, like you had said, with the Young Gentlemen's Club and such like that. And so activities like that helped. I mean, I can call for folks that would come home and, have a family, have kids to take care of, or other duties. But it was a good process. But when the time came to renew it, assistant principal, and I'll be honest with you, I wasn't ready to go through all that work again. But it was definitely worth it. And I'm not going to lie, it added $2,000 to every paycheck, so that was nice. I'm sorry, my yearly salary, not every paycheck. I saw Colin's eyes get big. He was going to resign up. No, it was my yearly paycheck.
Well, that's awesome, Jon. You talked a little bit about the time commitment, in terms of being nationally board certified and the work it takes and having kids and and all that stuff. And you talked about you weren't active on Twitter, and now you're very active, and you are a very avid blogger, and you write multiple pieces per week. So tell us about, what interests you, what connects you, what connections have you made through this platform? What drives you to do all you've done in the blogging world?
Absolutely, Colin. Well, I've been online about 4 years. I've been connected about 4 years. I went to NAESP, I think it was in 2013, and heard Todd Whitaker speak. And Todd said, if you're not on Twitter, you got to get on Twitter. And, I kind of go by the rule, if Todd Whitaker says do it, then I do it. I don't do it. Because, when Todd says it, but I mean, it was great advice. And before that, I'll be honest, I thought it was something that my wife would just follow movie stars on. I really didn't know. And so I got on and became connected and just started lurking, I guess is what they say.
Yeah.
And then I heard of this thing called blogging and just became addicted to that. And the blogging is just so much fun because it's just a release. In other words, there came a point where if I didn't write at least 1 or 2 pieces a week, I was craving. In other words, I just had the need to tell a story. And my passion when I blog is to try to tell a story. In other words, it might be early on, I blogged mostly about my kids. So I would try to see the world through their eyes. I would see little events here and there, little experiences they had, and I would try to retell it and just try to find the joy in those moments. Recently, I've been blogging more about and how it's okay to make mistakes, kind of in connection with the podcast that I have through My Bad. But it's a lot of fun. I mean, I blog about different experiences at school with students, but obviously I always make sure I don't use student names, and I don't blog about anything that's negative whatsoever. I mean, I try to blog and celebrate our students and to try to tell their stories, because a lot of them, they're not told. People don't know, or they don't hear about them. And so I think it's important to tell those stories.
Hey, Andrea, I'm going to interrupt you if you're going to join in here. This leads to a good conversation. I too tried to blog, and I felt was somewhat successful at it, but that whole sharing your story thing, I think, is huge in terms of that in the blogging world, and that it's not about what you write, and it's about writing, period. And it's about, if you connect with one person and change that one person, you've done wonderful things. But I also, and even Andrea, if you want to jump in and share how you said Todd Whitaker brought you into the online world, and how scary that is, for lack of better descriptors, to put yourself out there, to be in a live show on a Sunday night at 8:00 at night. I will say Matt Dagner. I don't know if you know Matt. He worked with Jimmy Casas and I, and he's the one that encouraged me, along with Jimmy, to put myself out there. It is, once you do it, it's so rewarding. Not so much so in the physical sense, but in these types of things, in the relationships. I've never met you, Jon, but I've known you for, I think probably 3 or 4 years in terms of the online world.
I think definitely, yeah. Right.
And it's just amazing what relationships can be built on platforms. So I don't know if you have anything to add to that, or if Andrew, you want to join in and maybe talk a little bit about how you got involved in social media or whatever that looks like.
And I guess I would just say that I try to blog at least once a month, and that came from a workshop that I went to at Grantwood AEA with George Couros, and he tells a great story as well. But in my mind, blogging is really about reflecting. So at first I thought, nobody's going to want to listen to anything that I have to say. Why would I blog? But then really it was more about me and getting my thoughts organized into really a reflective piece. So that was my goal, and I've done okay with that. Since it's been about 2 years that I've tried to do at least once a month during the school year. So, and I guess it's really, for me, it's about reflection.
Absolutely, you both nailed it there. I mean, I've given presentations on blogging, and it is true. The very first time you write a piece and you push publish, and it's going out there to the world, can be, how are people going to take this? What are people going to think? And then, like you said, Colin, if it connects with one person, then you feel good about it. I mean, it doesn't matter that you have, 50 hits, 100 hits, 1,000, whatever number of hits. One person says, you know what, Colin, I want to do that same thing, and I know how you feel. And I think that's where it's rewarding. That's where, when I present to people who are a little bit leery or nervous about it, I say, look, all of us think that our story is not interesting, but the thing is, we each have a different story. And a lot of times what I'll do is I'll get people to pull out their cell phones, and I'll say, email me a picture that's important to you. Put it up on the screen, and then I have them tell me about the picture, and why is it important, and what does it mean to you? And in the end, what happens is they speak between usually 400 to 1,000 words. And I say, right there, that's your blog piece. Because I think what keeps a lot of people from blogging, one is it is nerve-wracking putting your thoughts and reflections out there. But two, I think their last experience with writing is in college. Yeah. And they think of red ink, and they think of APA formatting, and they think of all these things. The cool thing with blogging, you can write one-word sentences. You can write one-sentence paragraphs. You can, which I like to do a lot. I mean, you can have fun with it. You put quotes in there. You put images. I mean, the good thing I tell people about blogging is there are absolutely no rules. It is tough, but the more you do it and the more you put it out there, the easier it becomes. But it is all about, what said Andrea. It's very important, and it's very cathartic for me.
We have a question from our friend Brant in Wyoming. He wants to know, as an admin, how do you find time to blog?
Good question. I'll be honest with you. I truly believe that admin have more time than teachers. And there's probably going to be some admin that are listening that might say, Jon, you're crazy. But I'm at an elementary school too. I'm not at a high school where there are so many events going on at night. But I don't have the papers to grade at night. I don't have all those things. But having said that, I mean, I know there's different circumstances. A lot of times early, maybe 5 o'clock in the morning, write down my thoughts. I would write just stream of consciousness. And before you know it, when you start writing about an idea, or you write about an image, or you write about a quote or a photo, 500 words. And a lot of times what I would do is, as I was going to sleep, I would have some idea in my head. I would think about it. And I guess it would percolate overnight, and then I'd wake up and write about it, or sometimes in the evening, just for maybe an hour. Because to me, blogging is I get the same rush, the same high out of it as people do maybe watching TV sometimes, or exercising, or whatever. I mean, there's endorphins in writing a piece and trying to tell a story. And it is tough, but I think it all depends. As long as you can do it in an hour or two. Now, are there going to be mistakes? Absolutely. Is it going to be perfect? No. But you can get your piece out there, and you can share with the world what you want to say. I've noticed someone I'm connected with has been writing pieces. She joined this thing called 50-word blogs. And she's been putting out these 50-word blog pieces. She's been able to tell and share in just 50 words. So, I mean, it's tough, but I think a good goal for someone just starting would be maybe once a month. Don't worry about, you can press spell check. Don't worry about mistakes. Don't worry about this, that, the other. Just do it. And the sooner you start, the sooner you're going to find that it's a lot of fun and it's addicting. And at least one person, like you said, Colin, is going to respond and say, you know what, I saw that too, or my kid did that too, or I see what you're saying. Thanks for writing that.
I think you make a good point, John, in the fact that, it's not the time. Whether it's an admin or as a teacher, whether it's, none of us have an adverse amount of time. It's what you prioritize, and when you find blogging, like you said, something that creates a euphoric feeling for you, then you create time for that. And I tried to blog. I want to blog more. I don't get quite the euphoric feeling from it. I'm nervous as all get out when I hit the publish button, that I'm going to have critics and people judge me and those kind of things. That doesn't keep me from blogging. Mine right now is the time. I wish I had more time. I have a 7 and a 4-year-old and the time commitments at night, but it's the important piece is you will find time to do what's important to you, regardless of what it is, whether you're a coach, that can somehow manage the football season or basketball season. If blogging is important to you, you will do that. So very good points, John. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree with that, Colin. I'm really excited to hear more about your blog and about your podcast. So you've written about embracing mistakes and responding to adverse situations. Where did you develop your passion for these conversations?
I'll be honest, it comes from a story, or it comes from an event that took place a couple years ago with my daughter. And it's a brief story, so I'll tell you now. I was watching my daughter at a soccer practice. The only girl on the team. She was the only one who had never played before. And I'm watching my daughter at this soccer practice. Played before, and I'm watching, and I look over, and her team was scrimmaging one another. I look over, and she scored a goal for the other team. Myself as a dad, oh my gosh, how is she going to handle this? First of all, she's the only girl out there never played before. Is this going to be crying when she walks over? Because she was only in 3rd grade. This was a couple of years ago. Is she going to want to quit? Is she going to wish she never played? I had no idea as a father. I was thinking to myself, John, you better get one of these really good dad speeches ready. And she walks over across the field during the water break, and she looks at me and she says, Daddy, I too. I thought, what are you talking about? I too. And she said, Daddy, I too scored a goal for the other team. Remembered that earlier that year, I'd shared with her when I was in high school, I scored a goal for a high school team, sudden death overtime, that lost the game. It was a horrible moment. I'll never forget it, obviously. But it really hit me hard that the fact that I shared that with her made her feel okay about making her mistake. I mean, it was no big deal to her. It was like nothing. She got a sip of water, went back over there and played and kept having fun. But it wasn't then, but probably a few months later, I had been blogging for BAM Radio, and I went to them with this idea about having people come on and just share one big mistake. I'll tell you the power in, the responses that I get in direct messages or Voxes or emails of people saying, you know what, it was so wonderful to hear that person come on because I've made that same mistake too. And I used to beat myself up over it. And, now I feel better about it because I realized that Dave Burgess did this, or Eric Schenninger did this, or Todd Wicker, he was my very first guest. Todd Whitaker, by the way, was my very first follower on Twitter. It was pretty cool. And Todd Whitaker was my very first guest. I'm not gonna lie, I was so nervous when I had him on, but he came on and talked about a time where he lost his temper when he was a basketball coach and he got a technical foul. And for me, to hear Todd say that just blew me away because, you know, Todd, I always go by the fact he talks about treating people well 30 times out of 30. You know, he says you can't do it 29 times out of 30 because that one time out of 30, everybody's going to remember it. And here he talked about getting a technical. Now he talked about, you know, he went to the locker room afterwards. He apologized. He said, I never got a technical again. But the power of hearing someone like Todd Whitaker share the fact that he lost his temper was big. And from then on, I've been very lucky to have guests come on and share, you know, some really big personal and some tough mistakes. And they've said, you know what, John, hearing that made me feel a little bit better. People learn from the specific mistakes, but really the primary goal is for people to simply realize that it's okay to make them. And, you know, hopefully I want that to trickle down to students. I mean, I've made visits to schools where I talk to students. I talk to different adults about this as well. And so it's been a lot of fun. It's been very humbling to get to talk to people and have them trust me with their stories. Amazing experience that I'm really enjoying. I'm enjoying the ride.
So, John, you've had a podcast for over a year now, and My Bad from BAM can be found on iTunes and focuses on dealing with adversity and moving forward. As part of the courage, just tell us about the journey that you have had with this endeavor and some of the people you have been able to talk to.
The journey, I think what's important is that in the very beginning, especially, I shared big mistakes that I've made. It's not that I don't share mistakes now, and it's not that I don't make mistakes. I still make plenty of mistakes, and once in a while I'll share them, but they become less interesting. And I want the people, my guests, to share their story. But in the very beginning, it was really important for me first. In other words, I think as a leader, if you want people to be vulnerable, as a teacher, as an administrator, as a parent, you have to be the one willing to step first and be vulnerable first and put yourself out there. So, you know, in the very first probably 10 episodes, I made sure that I shared really big mistakes that I made. And that was powerful because what I realized is once I did that, it opened up the guest. It made them relax a little bit more. It made them feel more comfortable sharing their mistake. Powerful to hear. I mean, I've had several, New York Times sellers come on and talk about mistakes they've made from, Jonah Berger, who wrote the book Contagious. Come on. Jessica Leahy talked about, she wrote the book The Gift of Failure, and she talked about how when she got her first draft back from the editor said it wasn't any good, and she talked about how it was like the worst day of her life. One of the worst days of her life, just the impact of getting how she felt. And, to hear someone like that share that story, and know she's a New York Times bestseller, she speaks all over the country, all over the world, was powerful. I mean, it was really powerful. And I think I've interviewed well over 60 people. And what it's done for me is I don't fear mistakes anymore. I still make plenty of them. I don't fear them anymore. I always reference Maya Angelou's quote, do the best you can until you know better. And when you know better, do better. And a lot of times, what I found is we just don't know. There are times I've seen mistakes. A lot of the mistakes have to do with wanting to be in control and show power. A lot of the guests come on, and some of my mistakes are the same way. We want to be in charge. We want to be in power, and sometimes we step too far. Some of the mistakes have to do with ego. Our ego gets in the way. We all do that. But what it's helped me do is identify different types of mistakes and to see where they come from and try to identify them in myself. And I mean, really cool is that some of the folks have come on and they've shared mistakes in what I would like to call their power area. Eric Schenninger came on and talked about how he was the one who came up with the no phone policy in his high school. He was the one that wrote that policy. And yet, we know Eric Schenninger is a digital pioneer. I mean, he's done so much. Dave Burgess came on. Lesson that just bombed 2 years in a row. How behavior management was an absolute mess. You know, when we see Dave Burgess and we hear Dave Burgess, we think, how in the world could anybody ever take their eyes off him? I mean, he's so engaging. He's so amazing as a presenter. How is that possible? Todd Neslony came on. And, you know, he talked about how his moniker is Tech Ninja Todd. He came on and talked about over one summer, he learned about all these new tech tools, like 20 different tech tools. And he started the next year and tried almost all of them. And it bombed, he said. And somebody finally came to him and said, look, Todd, just try one or two. Yeah. It's been amazing to have these folks come on and really share mistakes in areas in which they are really, really strong. I mean, Star Saxon came on and talked about how she used to wield grades like a powerful weapon. And now she's written books on trying to get rid of grades and give students much more ownership. So that's what's been very humbling. And the people that come on are just amazing, and that they share, like I say, mistakes that you wouldn't know they make, but it's so important to hear them share, because a lot of times, you know, Colin and Andrea, what we see are people's end result, and we never get to hear about the journey. And what they do is they come on and they tell us about the journey. They tell us about how they got from A to B. That is the B. And it's amazing. So that's been really powerful. That's moved me a lot, and that's just been very humbling.
Sorry, I don't know if you guys saw that, but my bad.
That's all right. I didn't even see.
Definitely. We've never seen something like that on IAedChat before.
Yeah, recorded IAedChat. Great.
My bad, right?
I'll be honest, I didn't even see.
It was my youngest son with a towel on his head, completely buck naked, flexing. So
nice.
Yeah.
That is good times.
Awesome sauce. Yep. You don't normally prepare for those moments, but there you have it.
Well, let me give you a mistake I made. Oh no, this is good. This is good. This leads into a mistake that I've shared on an episode before. And it's very easy to judge parents, and not you, but in other words, in schools, it's easy to judge parents based on on the way their child might come to school, or maybe certain situations. You know, a kid might come to school and might have a certain body odor, or they might have clothes that might not fit, or they might be missing something. And, you know, there were times, I'm not going to lie, where I would look and think, wow, I don't think their parents are really into them. And, you know, it's awful for me to think that. To judge someone else like that is awful. So there was a time, my son, I think, he's 6 years old now. He was probably 3 years old. And I used to drop him off at daycare. And I'll never forget, one day I dropped him off, and, you know, I thought everything was fine. And then my wife picked him up, and she comes home and she said, John, do you know what you did this morning? I said, Derek off. His little friend was hanging out of his pants, for lack of a better term. And I'm thinking, how on earth could I possibly have missed that? I'm thinking, if I ever had a child come to school like that, I would probably think, I got to call social services. This must be a parent that doesn't care about their child. And, you know, here I make a mistake like that. So, you know, you make a mistake like that and it gives you empathy. You think, you know what, anything can happen. Anything can happen. But I mean, I'm thinking, how in the world did I send my child to school with his little friend hanging out of his pants? But I did it. So, you know, you gave me that perfect segue there, Colin. That was excellent.
You're welcome. Not planned, but you're welcome.
No, hey, that's all right. That's all right. I got plenty of mistakes.
So, John, you've talked quite a bit about your guests that you have on My Bad. Let's change gears back to your blog again. Where do you get some of your inspiration for your blogging? What are you reading right now? Or what are some of the other podcasts that you're listening to? Could be educational, not educational. Fill us in. What do you recommend?
Let's see. Some podcasts that I listen to. I love Tim Ferriss's podcast. I have a hard time. They're very long. So they're like an hour and a half to 2 hours. But some of the folks he gets to interview and the depth he goes into is huge. Jessica Leahy and KJ, I'm going to butcher her last name, D'Antonio. They have a podcast called Why I Write. Really, really good, because it's just very informal, and they talk about writing and the ins and outs of writing. Right now I'm reading two books. I'm reading a book called The War of Art. It's a powerful book about fighting what the author Stephen Pressfield calls the resistance. In other words, it's capital R resistance. In other words, oftentimes when we're working on a project, we feel like we want to give up. We feel like we want to doubt ourselves. We have to just keep pushing on. It's normal to have resistance. It's normal to have doubts. I just started a book called 13 Things That Successful People Don't Do. I think it's something like that. And I'll be honest, I've read the introduction for that. And then I just started a book, Rick Jetter and Rebecca Coda, called The Dunk Tank, or Dunk Tank. As far as ideas for blogs, I'll be honest, when I first started blogging, it sounds crazy, I had no idea where they would come from. I would literally what I try to do, what we don't do often enough, I think, is just stop and try to notice the world around us, because we are in such a hurry. Our heads are in our phones to rush. And probably for the first couple of years I was blogging, I would literally just try to notice little moments in life. Like I wrote a piece one time about just watching my son wake up. Writing a piece about my daughter and the way her arm was folded behind her, and what it said about her at that moment when she was playing tennis. And little tiny moments, I call it exploding a moment. And I can't think of the author. I'm copying that term from someone else. But a lot of times there's just little poignant, powerful moments that are easy to go unnoticed, but are so powerful. So that's what I used to write about a lot. I still do that some. Now I'm trying to write more about mistakes that I make. Here's a pieces for BAM I've been trying to expand upon episodes and tell the story a little bit more of guests. Like I put one out today about Brad Gustafson and a mistake. He was a guest on the show several months ago, and I wrote a piece just trying to go into more detail about that episode. I mean, it was crazy. I would literally just try to notice things, and then all of a sudden, I got to write about that. It'd be a photo. It'd be something my son would say. It'd be, it could be anything. It was just, and that's not giving the audience much to go on, I know, but I think oftentimes if we just stop, notice more of the world around us, we're going to see moments that are so powerful. Whether you might snap a picture with your phone, you might write down a quote that your kid says, maybe a song resonates with you or something like that, but just trying to make meaning and explode a moment.
So, Jon, tell us a little bit about, I know I talked about in your bio, this gentleman's club where you're making connections with students and all the above. Talk us about this and highlighting why it's so important for you to make these connections with students.
Yeah, Colin, so what I did is my 6th year that I was teaching. I was teaching 5th grade at Easton Elementary School in Easton, Maryland. And I had heard about a gentleman, I think his name is Dr. Stephen Peters, and he had run a gentleman's club before. I noticed that we had a lot of young men that just epidemic. I mean, it's probably across the country. It is where I live, and that a lot of our young men are being raised by women. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying that's a problem at all. In other words, I say that women run the town where I am because a lot of fathers aren't present. It's very sad. I just saw a lack of male role models in a lot of these kids' lives. And so I thought, you know what, why not get these kids together? And I got the idea from Stephen Peters' book and teach them about how to tie a tie, how to handle stressful situations. We went to Barnes & Noble because I'll be honest, Barnes & Noble is a place where I could literally sit there and stay all day. And we went one time to Barnes & Noble in Annapolis, Maryland. And I'll never forget, it was so much fun. We went there, we took a bus, 20 kids there. And they each had $10 to buy a book. And just imagine, probably 90% of these kids had never even seen a Barnes & Noble, and to walk in there and just see a building full of books was bewildering. It was amazing to them. And the Barnes & Noble, they were so gracious. They actually, as we were leaving, gave every child 2 huge chocolate chip cookies and hot chocolate. I couldn't believe it. They were just so happy we were there. Trying to get these young men to feel better about themselves, to give them skills to be able to navigate the world. Because, we can teach kids how to read, how to write, how to think better. But if they don't have these social skills, these, I guess we call them soft skills. And, soft skills, I think that's misinterpreted a lot of times because soft is a word that's used differently, heard differently. But a lot of our kids, a lot of our adults don't have these soft skills. And they see it as, especially with young men, they see it as not being masculine. Couldn't be further from the truth, in my opinion. I mean, these soft skills are so important. And, I try to talk to kids all the time. I deal mostly with young men in the roles that I've had in the last 7 or 8 years when it comes to discipline. And I tell them, the way to be powerful in this world is to have these soft skills, to use your manners, to be kind, to be gracious, to be forgiving, to be understanding. And that's what we'll try to teach these young men in the Young Gentlemen's Club. And it was tough. I mean, it was fun. It was tough. I mean, there were times where I had, 25 young men that had behavior difficulties. And I'll be honest, it taught me how to work a room. It taught me how to stay calm. It taught me, helped prepare me to be an assistant principal. And it opened my eyes because I'm very lucky. I've lived a very privileged life in the Young Gentlemen's Club, and a lot of kids I work with haven't. And I think it kind of goes back to what I wrote about. Once you hear their stories and see their stories, you get a much better understanding of why they behave sometimes the way they do. And I think to myself, you know what, if that's me and I had that life, or I lived in those circumstances, I wouldn't do half as well as they do. And so it was a really great experience. I did it for 7 years. And then once I became assistant principal, I just couldn't do that. I couldn't have that commitment because I had too many after school duties. But it was a wonderful experience, one that I'll never forget, and one that helped me grow in many ways.
So I guess piggybacking off of that just a little bit, because that's making a great impact with students. When you think about our work with students every day, where should we direct our focus? So everybody's lives are full of so many things everybody has so many different needs. As educators, what should be our focus?
I think without a doubt, what we're missing is we're not tapping into kids' strengths. And I know a lot has been written about this. I feel like even this recently, I feel like someone's written about it recently. I read about it. I mean, a lot of people do write about this and talk about this, but I think we're always trying weaknesses. We're always trying to build up or identify their deficits. And we don't spend much time at all with their strengths. And it baffles me because, once we graduate from high school, we graduate from college, we all spend the rest of our lives working with our strengths for the most part. I mean, for the most part, we do get to get jobs in things that we're skilled at, things that we're passionate about, things we enjoy. But kids don't get that choice. I mean, kids go to school every day and we point out their weaknesses to them full time, if any, working on their strengths. Art schools, and that kind of breaks my heart because I think about what do we do when we get home? Most of what we do when we get home has to do with the arts, whether it's music, dance, physical exercise, things that we really don't spend a whole lot of time during the school day. So I really wish, I think we're missing the fact that we're losing students. I saw, I think who this was. I think it was Pedro Nogueira talking at the Title I conference this year in California. He talked about student interest level and how it's very, very high at kindergarten. My son was in kindergarten this year and absolutely loved school, loved going to school every day. But that every year after kindergarten, it drops. There's kids' senior year when they're looking forward to getting out. But what's so sad is kids come to school so enthusiastic, so ready to take on the world. And we're missing the boat there. We're missing that. I mean, they're excited, and then first grade comes, and second grade, and then we're testing them, and then we're trying to identify their weaknesses. And then if they're weak in something, then we double up on that. And I'm not saying we should allow kids to be weak in something, but I'm saying on their strength. Why not help kids feel good about themselves instead of always, always, always focusing on weaknesses? It just bothers me. That's just one of those things that bothers me. I don't think we spend enough time on kids' strengths, and we spend too much time on their weaknesses.
And if that's what we're focusing on, what are the kids focusing on as well? You know, we want them to focus on their strengths as well as focusing on what they need to work on. But if that's all we're focusing on, of course, that's what our students are going to focus on as well.
Absolutely. I mean, it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking. I mean, it kind of makes me, that's kind of part of why I feel so passionate about, you know, the podcast, my bad, and about sharing mistakes, because I have one, and I have had a college student come on, but I wanted to trickle down, the mindset to trickle down. I've gone to schools and talked to classes from kids, first grade all the way to fifth grade, because our students, our kids, our own children, they beat themselves up over mistakes. And it's really heartbreaking to watch. And, you know, they get that from us. They get that from social media. They're not allowed to make a mistake. And that when they do make a mistake, that something's wrong with them. And that really bothers me a lot. And so that's a big thing with me.
I agree, John. You know, I talk to adults and students all the time, and I always talk about, you know, what's the number one thing that students always go home and talk to their parents about. It's not about the awesome things you do in the classroom. Some students do, don't get me wrong. Some students do go home and talk about the awesome things that happen in the classroom, but it's more along the lines that they go home and talk about what negatively impacted them today, what caused them to not be successful. And that even happens for students. You know, we spend so much time in our worlds, you know, whether it's educational or not, we're talking about the negatives. And if it's our media, or what puts headlines in the newspaper, you know, it's not what we do positively. It's more so negatively that it receives the focus. And I appreciate your work in focusing on the positive, because it really needs to head that direction, and more so than ever. So, you know, we've talked a lot tonight about a lot of things, you know, not anything specifically, but if you could change one thing in the landscape of education right now, starting tomorrow or next week, what would it be, and why do you feel this way, John?
What would I change? I think I guess I would probably kind of go off what I was just talking about before. I think one thing I would do is I would absolutely require every child and adult, because I need this as well, to begin their day with 1 hour of exercise. I think 30 minutes of it could be just physical exercise, individual, but then I think another 30 minutes would be some sort of team sport. I think that'd be really important. I think our physical health, and our physical health oftentimes has a huge effect on our mental health. I think it would get rid of a lot of cortisol in kids' brains, because, as I always say, we have a lot of kids that come to school, you know, what are boils at 212? And all of a sudden, you know, you see a kid and somebody taps them in the hallway and they lose it. And we wonder, why on earth did that kid lose it? Well, it's because that kid has so much stress. They came to school with 211. Exercising, I mean, would definitely help that. 30 minutes of rigorous exercise, push-ups, calisthenics, sprints, running, stretching, anything like that will be really, really important. And then something I've noticed is kids have a difficult time. They don't know how to play on teams as much anymore. You watch them at recess, you watch them in different situations, and they just have a really hard time. And I think some of that is kids. You don't see kids out at playgrounds, at parks as much, just playing pickup games. You know, Buddy and I were talking about that the other day, how, you know, we were growing up, we used to be out there and it was just kids. And if something went wrong, we figured it out. We made our own rules. We had bumps and bruises, but we were fine. Kids don't know how to do that nowadays. Thing I would change is going back to the strengths thing. I would what a child's strength is, and I would have that kid spend a good portion of their day on that strength. I think it's okay to focus on weaknesses, because I think it's important for kids to have, you know, minimal or average level skills in certain areas, but really focus on a kid's strength, because sometimes we're going to lose them. We're going to lose them before they even leave elementary school. We might not ever even know what they're good at, because we didn't capitalize on it. And I think the interest level would be much higher. Kids would enjoy school. Would be a place they couldn't wait to come. I mean, imagine if, I know, I think, he read an article about this a couple of years ago where he built in, I think it was 20% time or Google time for his staff members. He allowed them like an hour a day or a couple hours a week, whatever they wanted. I mean, that would be a blast if I could go to work every day or a couple times a week and spend an hour blogging. I mean, think about that, and think about, whatever you would want to do. Go to work and spend an hour or two a day, or I'm sorry, an hour a day maybe, or even just a half hour a day working on your passion. It'd be great. If kids knew that they were going to go to school and spend a half an hour working on something that they really enjoy, they know they're good at, 6.5 or 7 hours, bearable. I mean, if we're honest, that's how we make it through our days. We sometimes, pardon me. Sorry about that. My camera just got turned off. If we're honest about it, if we're really honest, I mean, that's what keeps our days going, is thinking about the things that we're enjoying, thinking about the things that we're passionate about. All of a sudden, my phone went on low power mode and the camera went out. I apologize. I'm going to try to fix this. I'm not quite sure at this moment. But I can still hear everything.
Still hear you.
Yeah, we can still hear you, Jon. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, I think that's really important. I think kids would look forward to coming to school. I think the adults would look forward to coming to school. I think it would make a huge, huge difference.
So when we're looking at about maybe 10 more minutes of our conversation,
okay,
thinking about, what we've talked about already, is there anything else you want to hit home on or maybe reiterate to highlight from our conversation? Or is there something that we've maybe missed that you'd still like to hit on your passions or anything else you'd like to talk about tonight?
I think, let's see. I mean, one thing that I'm really looking forward to this next year. I'm looking forward to getting into as many schools as possible, talking to students. I mean, I'm still going to be the assistant principal where I am, but I'm looking to go to schools, to meet with staff members, to meet with possibly different businesses, different districts, because I really want to meet with these groups to help them understand the value of being more vulnerable and the power, because it's just amazing how much more powerful. Sorry, I'm trying to fix my camera. Hey, there we go. It's amazing how it changes the culture of a classroom and how it can change the culture of a building. Once you feel it's okay to make mistakes. I've seen it in classrooms when I've visited different classrooms around the country. I've seen classrooms where I walked in and what I do is I have kids share mistakes. And what happens is in the very beginning, 1 or 2 kids will raise their hand. And by the end, every kid in the room cannot wait to share their mistake. I think doing that with staff members, I mean, I've got a full day PD planned in which, staff members, or whether it's district leadership, come in and they come up with a big mistake. And obviously what I do is I talk about the power of mistakes. I share how important it is. I share a lot of the reflections, and I give, firsthand examples and what I've learned from interviewing over 60 people. A school, how it would change a district, how it would change a company. To know that, the person to your left and the person to your right makes mistakes just like you. And I just think it'd be so powerful to have that. And so I'm looking forward to visiting schools next year and doing that. I think it's going to be amazing. I think the culture change in that building or that company would be huge. And it's something that I can't wait to do. I'm so excited about it because the things that I've learned in reflecting over the last year about mistakes and the things I've learned from talking to have been just absolutely amazing. I mean, the stories that have been trusted to me, it's been a huge honor. I mean, for people to come on and share some of the stories they've shared with me, and they're not just sharing it with me, they're sharing it with the world when they put it on the podcast. It's been just absolutely amazing. And I think it's inspired others. And over the next year.
So, Jon, as we're wrapping up here, what's next? You know, you've talked about a lot of things that, you know, you're heading to 2 new buildings as an elementary principal. You know, I've heard a lot of talk about mistakes and a lot of, there's a lot of knowledge in that head there, my man. A book forthcoming. You know, someone that blogs as much as you, I would think there might be some publishing or publishers out there maybe knocking at your door, but what's next for you?
I'll be honest, there is a book coming. I know that they say you should never talk about a book until there is a book that I'm working on about this. And it's basically, I'm retelling some of the most powerful stories from the people that I've interviewed, and it's something that I'm very excited about. I mean, something else I'm very excited about, I've learned sometimes watching other people fulfill their passions is amazing. You know, Simon Sinek talks about that, how literally if you watch someone else do a kind act, or you watch someone else who's successful, endorphins get released in your brain and helps you to feel good. You know, I've got several close friends that are either have just released books or getting ready to release books. I've got a good friend of mine who's getting ready to release an album. And just, I'm so excited for them. I'm really, really excited about that. And I've learned to find joy in other people's joy so much. And it's just, it makes it a lot easier. I mean, you know, oftentimes, I think I talked about this in an episode. I remember a day where I was feeling really down, and I was, you know, trying to figure out what's going to make me happy. I'm trying this and I'm trying that, and that didn't work, and this didn't work. And then I realized, you know, someone came to me and they had a problem, and they trusted me, and I talked to them, and I was able to lift them up a little bit, and it made me happy. And then it made me think, you know what, Jon, stop focusing on yourself, start focusing on other people's happiness, and in turn, selfishly, that makes us feel happy. And so that's in the future for me. I mean, I'm really looking forward to watching some close friends fulfill their passions, while at the same time, you know, I'm working on mine as well.
That's great, and I appreciate that, Jon. Thanks. I had no intuition that a book was maybe on the way, but I do and have worked in this game long enough to know that, and work closely with a lot of the people that you work. They're all have such great stories, and we need to live in an environment more so our messages are published. So I appreciate and I thank you for that. So as we wrap up, we from the IAedChat team appreciate Jon and taking the time tonight. You know, it's not easy to take a Sunday night and away from your family and spend an hour with us yahoos online. And so we want to say thank you for that. But make sure you follow him at Jon Harper 70BD. He also has a website, Jon Harper, and now it's Jon Harper, HARPER, 70.com, and his podcast on the BAM Radio Network, www.bamradionetwork.com / my-bad, and then another slash. So you want to close out with, my man, before I come up with some upcoming events here in Iowa?
No, I just want to thank you for the opportunity. It's been a lot of fun. I mean, you two are great hosts. You made me feel relaxed, and I think we had a good time. And but hey, it's a good time. I mean, we got to have some good laughs, running around. I got to share the story about my son. I mean, it was great. It was great. This is the power of being connected, like you said. I mean, you and I have never spoken before. You know, each other just from reading people's blogs, seeing people on Twitter, and it's just being connected is so important and so powerful. So I just want to thank you too for the opportunity.
And again, thank you, Jon. You know, you're going to do great things, and I appreciate you taking the time for us and our listeners tonight. So some upcoming events here, the SAI conference, the School of Administrators of Iowa conference is August 2nd and 3rd in Des Moines. We will have actually IAedChat live that morning to kick off things on August 2nd. There's also a Iowa City Summit featuring Google for EDU at Liberty High, which is a new high school here in North Liberty, Iowa, August 7th and 8th of this upcoming school year. Contact Stacy Beamer if you'd like some information on that at sbeamer, or Matt Dagner. I talked about that gentleman earlier. Great man. At MW Dagner, DEGNER, with questions. There's also a website, GOGL/X2LS22. If you want or need information on that, or if you have any information that you'd like us to share out on our live show, please let us know ASAP. But I'm going to pass it off to Andrea here to close out tonight.
Never fear, we definitely will be sharing links to the Google Summit at Iowa City Summit, the Google for EDU. I will share that on our hashtag. And then I also have shared links to both Jon's podcast with BAM Radio Network, as well as his blog. So never fear, you did a great job, Colin, but I will definitely share those on our hashtag as well. So thanks everybody for joining us tonight and sharing your thoughts on IAedChat Live, always the last Sunday of every month. It's a great learning opportunity with all of you each time we get together, and we will also be sharing out this conversation on our website, the Google transcript, so you can check out that as soon as we share it as well. It will be on our website, but I will also share a link to it on our hashtag. A very special thank you to our guest, Jon Harper. It was great to meet you, and it was a very good conversation. And then thank you also to the rest of our IAedChat team, Colin Wicken and then Dan Butler. We missed you tonight. Be sure to also follow some of the new friends that you met here tonight and visit the IAedChat hashtag to continue the conversation. We will be back again next week with another great topic. Until next time, be the change.